Nick Chubb is in fact going to start the season on the pup list, physically unable
Hmm.
to perform, which means since they placed him on it, he now cannot play in the first 4 weeks of the
Right.
season. We know for a
Hmm.
fact now that you are
Hmm.
looking at a Browns offense that will not have Nick Chubb in it. So, what does that mean from a fantasy standpoint?
Jerome Ford will start to move up. He was the guy that we saw emerge last year as a pretty usable fantasy option. I also feel like Nick Chubb's ADP maybe isn't going to drop significantly because the expectation of the 4 games missed at least was already baked into that. The Browns have a whole bunch of running backs behind him. And so we'll see sort of once we get the cuts, who's going to be behind him. Deontay Foreman, of course. They've got Naheem Hines there as well. So we'll find out exactly who ends up being, I guess, second on the depth chart behind Jerome Ford and maybe mixes into a committee situation. But for right now, Jerome Ford is the Browns back to target in your drafts.
I'm not 100% sure that I agree with just that specific part of the statement because I think if you're going to take Jerome Ford, there's a short shelf life to his relevance to you in fantasy. So you're certainly still not taking him high, and Nick Chubb's ADP is still higher than Jerome Ford. So I think the smart strategy there is to go ahead if you're interested in this. And I think that this is particularly interesting to people who feel like they're a little bit behind the eight ball at running back and they just need to make it up somehow. You're getting some value with that Browns backfield where they're going, which right now Nick Chubb in FFC drafts is going at the end of the ninth round, and Jerome Ford is literally the next pick at the start of
Yeah, their
the
ADP
next
is
running back
basically,
pick.
yeah, their ADP is the same. And the reason I say that Ford is the guy to get now, because think about this though, Lindsay. Number one, Nick Chubb suffered a really gruesome injury, and he suffered it like it wasn't like a late season injury either. Like he was out for most of last season. He's out 4 weeks. So that's the entire month of September. Do you think they're going to bring him back and just give him 18 carries? No. So I would not be surprised if we didn't see Nick Chubb really be Nick Chubb until the second half of the season. And so I can 100% see a scenario where Jerome Ford's the better fantasy running back, maybe for the first 2 months in Cleveland. And then they eventually move that to Nick Chubb. It's not like TJ Hawkinson, who got hurt really late last year. And then you're kind of like, okay, expecting that, he could miss the first 4 games. We'll get news on that at some point this week, I'm sure. But the fact that Chubb didn't really ever seem close to coming back makes me feel like we're not going to see Nick Chubb at his top end level sort of performance potential until maybe 2 months into the season.
If you're really strong at running back, I don't know if this is where you're going, right? Is for either of those two guys. Do you see a scenario where that's like what you're looking to
If
do in the rounds that they're going in? And again, we're talking about ninth and 10th round, probably
Mhm.
like roughly in that range. So I'm trying to think of the person that would be looking to check that box with those two running backs or with one of those two running backs in that range. The benefit of that is that you can go back to back picks and get somebody who is playable every single week of the season, assuming that Jerome Ford, that he's not supplanted and that the job doesn't go to somebody else. And then you
Mhm.
have high upside at the end of the season when you really want somebody who can win you your league, who's healthy for the postseason and can get you through the playoffs. And now you have a strong asset.
Right now, if I'm in a draft and I'm going to be in a lot in the next like week, I'm drafting Jerome Ford ahead of Nick Chubb. Just doing it. I'd
But
rather.
what's the upside? Like you're drafting
What's the
somebody
what's
you. No, well,
what's the
let me finish
upside?
my thought. Let me finish my thought because you know he's going to go away. Like you're
I don't
planning
know
on
that.
him going
I don't
away.
know that. I don't know that. Completely. I don't know that. I really don't. Listen, first 4 weeks of the season, Jerome Ford's going to be the lead back for the Browns, and we saw what he did last year. 2 weeks into the month of October, we might not even see Nick Chubb. Think about it. He's got to stay out for 4 weeks. And at
Right.
4 weeks, then they start thinking about bringing him back. He's got to get back into football shape. He's not going to be ready to come back after 4 games. Like, I think, if anything else, if they activate him for their fifth game, it's going to be like we're bringing him back slowly, almost like a Brees Hall kind of thing last year in the first 4 weeks, where we might not see Nick Chubb be a double-digit touch guy until the end of October. And then, okay,
But
like, yeah, then great. I mean, for the last, couple of months of the season, then am I going to have, Nick Chubb like we've seen him in the past? No, probably not. They're probably going to use Jerome Ford more, especially if Jerome Ford looks good, right? You want as many weapons in the offense as you can get. And this is not the old Browns offense that's ground and pound and they just want to play defense and they're gonna run the ball.
If I can have Nick Chubb and roll the dice that he is Nick Chubb by the end of the season. So come playoff time, I now have a guy that I can plug in there as long as I can keep myself afloat, who is potentially a high-end performer at that point, at this price point, then I guess that's something that I feel comfortable rolling the dice about. But again,
would you rather
I'm doing it if I can get both. And this is a specific
okay.
like
Okay.
I want to
That
click
makes sense.
I want to click for both of them, and I feel comfortable taking Nick Chubb like in the order that I would take them. I would take Nick Chubb and then I would take Jerome Ford, because I think by taking Nick Chubb, for most people, you are rendering Jerome Ford relatively worthless because they don't want to draft somebody that they're only going to have for the first half of the season and then is potentially going to go bye-bye.
I'd rather have a guy that I know is going to be there for the first 4 to 6 weeks, and then I can play the waiver wire during the course of the season. Somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to emerge. You can pick up a player, and then you'll have depth. And when Chubb comes back, if Jerome Ford loses the starting role, which we expect him to once Chubb is ready to go, but we don't know when that's going to be, then you're covered.